panel discussion is on regulatory harmonization on and ease of doing business, simplifying licensing, QMS, and compliance under India's MDR framework. To moderate the session, may I please invite Mr. Anil Jauhri, sir, former CEO of NABCB and one of the India's most respected voices in quality system. Now I inviting our esteemed panelist, Mr. Abhijit Ghosh, sir, Assistant Drug Controller, Government of NTC, Delhi. Dr. Vibhav Garg, sir, President Global Government Affairs, Meril. Mr. Ashish Indani, sir, Cluster Head, Zydus, MedTech and author Essentials of Medical Device Clinical Research. Mr. Aditya Vats, sir, Director, Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance, Termo India, Director Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance at Termo India with Indian MedTech practices with global quality and safety standards. I request all the panelists, please come on the stage. First panel discussion and our panelists present on the stage. I request everyone, please give a round of applause for all the panelists present here for the first round of discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are already running way behind schedule. My session should have ended by now, and we have a panelist who wants to leave at 1 o'clock. So we'll spend precisely 38 minutes. We'll end at 1 o'clock. We need to give others people a time also. So we'll cut short our session. This is a session on a handful of topics actually: regulatory harmonization and ease of doing business, simplifying licensing, QMS and compliance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the panelists some time to express their thoughts on any or all of these topics which have been given. And I'll start with industry first so that the regulator can take into account industry comments when he speaks. And I'll reverse the order. Normally, I've always suffered. My name is Anil Jauhri. So, start alphabetically. I will be one of the first ones everywhere. So I'm going to start in the reverse order. And let me invite Dr. Vibhav Garg first to express his views on the theme of the session.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you organizers for inviting me for this panel discussion. And it is a very opportune theme that we have, which is combining regulatory harmonization and ease of doing business. And both of them are very, very critical for the growth of the sector in the country. And when the sector will grow in the country, obviously I'm assuming the exports will also grow. So India will get the due positioning that we need as a hub for medical devices globally. When we talk about harmonization, and I think the panel before me has talked a lot about regulatory harmonization, I have two more experts from industry who will talk more about regulatory harmonization. But I think in the panel before us, Mr. Baid alluded to, it is very critical for us to be competitive when it comes to our regulatory framework globally. And why I'm saying so, it is very important. So all of you must have heard about the FTAs that we are signing. In last about 1.5 to 2 years, we have signed multiple FTAs, which is with EU, with UK, with New Zealand, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, none of the FTA includes what we call MRAs, the Mutual Recognition Agreements, which talks about the confidence, the lack of confidence that the regulatory authorities of these countries might have on our regulatory authorities. And I think it is very critical for us to reach to that standard where we are. While for Indian regulatory approvals, and I keep saying this to all, that for last about 2, 3, 4 years, we have really not gone to CDSCO because the things are moving in autopilot mode. The things are moving in a fast pace there. But I think in terms of the trust of regulatory agencies outside India is very, very critical. That is one point that I wanted to talk about. The second, ease of doing business, I think, which is related to regulation, but also otherwise, I was very, as part of my role, I also look into government business. And I came across a couple of tenders just recently, which are talking about that the device should be either BIS approved or USFDA or CE. Now, I fail to understand how can someone compare a BIS with a FDA and CE. I think that's where we find it challenging as Indian companies, that you are comparing a standard making body with a regulatory authority of another country. It should be either CDSCO or FDA and CE. I mean, I don't need FDA CE to sell in my country, but still, if at all. I think that's where ease of doing comes into picture, where we find these hurdles which are related to medical technologies, regulatories, approvals in the country. Also, in terms of, if you talk about medical device rules, all of us know, rule number 7, it talks about, the IC, BIS standard or ISO or IEC. I think that's where harmonization is there, but we feel it is very important for government to look into these hurdles where Indian companies are find it difficult to really get into or sort of break into these hurdles of the outside regulatory agencies being applied on public procurement in our country. So I'll stop there, Mr. Jauhri, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Vibhav, holding on to the time, less than what I expected. Next, I would go alphabetically. Ashish, your thoughts on any or all of these topics which have been bundled together as our session.
Yep. Thank you, sir, and thanks to the audience here. So when Vibhav already spoke a lot about how we are going fast-paced on the regulatory harmonization outside and what are the challenges currently we are facing inside, I'll pick that point and I'll speak more of an inward harmonization. Currently, we earlier didn't have any regulation. Fortunately, we have a very well prescribed regulation and we have a lot of clarity about the things. But now where the problem comes, when I speak of the global harmonization, if I look to the global standards or global regulations, they are by principle similar to what we may also have in regulation. But are we harmonized internally? If I want to take a medical device, if I want to open a medical device startup, I have to take 100 plus approvals. Now, that is a different story. If I come even and try to launch my product in India, do we have the harmonization within the testing laboratory, the standard making body, the regulatory authority, the different regulations coming from customs, coming from meteorology, coming from the corporate affairs ministry and all this? There is a significant lack of harmonization within ministries of the country itself. The ministry which is regulating the Ayush products and the ministry which is regulating the healthcare products in modern medicine, there is no harmonization. Conducting the clinical trial for a drug versus device and conducting the clinical trial between a medical product in Ayush system versus a drug product, there is no harmonization. So this inward harmonization is probably a bigger matter of introspection to make the business to happen more easily. I can give an example of recent big step taken by the government of UP, which has harmonized the entire regulation, entire procedure for the whole state-owned institutions to make the life of sponsors and the clinical trial researchers easier by bringing the entire clinical study platform on one and making the SOPs harmonized all over the state. Why can't we take at least some similar approach and bring all the requirements of the approvals for medical devices on the same and the uniform platform for all healthcare products? Why can't we do that? So that's probably something that I start with my opening and hand it back to sir.
Thanks, Ashish. Mr. Aditya, what's now? Next.
Thank you so much, sir. First of all, it's a privilege to be a part of such an esteemed panel. With respect to the opening remarks, I would say that when it comes to India in medical devices, it's a pivotal stage for us at this point of time. And let me take you a few years back, where there was a clear transition. We have witnessed a clear transition from fragmented regulatory environment to structured regulatory-based risk classifications which have been introduced under Medical Device Rules 2017. And there have been multiple subsequent amendments which is increasing the scope and the oversight. And this shift is very, very instrumental in improving the patient safety, strengthening the regulator's capability, and also aligning India to global best practices. Now, when all these things have happened, because MDR came into existence in 2018, and it's been almost close to a decade, and we have taken quite large steps in terms of where we have come when we compare ourselves with mature markets like US FDA or a TGA or probably HSA. We have taken quite a lot of steps which are in the right direction. But with the progress has come the complexity as well. Complexity of multiple regulatory layers, navigating the licensing system. But at the end, I would like to close it off by saying that it is not about deregulating the medical device sector just for the ease of doing business. It is about smart regulations where we are harmonizing ourselves, in terms of making ourselves to stand up to those mature markets like US FDA or probably CE markets. We have to come to that level. And we have been taking a lot of steps towards that. And one of the critical steps what we have taken is getting ourselves into the IMDRF membership. We are now affiliate members. Now that is a step which clearly demonstrates that we are going in the right direction.
Thanks. So last now the regulator's perspective on this, Mr. Abhijit Ghosh, your views.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, respected Mahajanji, Kamalji, and all the respected dignitaries of MedTech sectors. And obviously the manufacturers and industrialists, now the 3 versus 1. 3 is, so I have to attend everything and then...
Regulator is heavyweight, so you need 3 industry people to tackle him.
Vibhavji, that is the misconception. I am conception. He is a standard for
I am not
body,
a regulator.
And India has a federal structure, central and state drug control. So obviously that fragmentation gives some points which, as Indani sahab has told, some points the state drug controls are taking it in a different way and central taking it different way. But now we are here for the MedTech sector, not for the Ayush and not for any pharma related matter. So first of all, if we think the ecosystem for the regulators and regulatory bodies, the ease of doing business in MedTech sector is not only the policy objects, it's the foundation for the innovation, investment and patient healthcare. So the regulators often considered as the barrier. As you three already give some points, but officially regulation is not a barrier, it is the foundation of trust. When the question of harmonization in MedTech sector in global healthcare, trust is the only most important currency. So harmonization is required in everywhere. In case of regulation, it is most important. And during harmonization, we can say that if India aspires to become a global MedTech hub, our regulatory standard must align more closely with the international accepted benchmark. Now question is alignment and harmonization. Harmonization is most important because to build a system which will help to reduce the duplication and to enter more regulation which United States FDA, European Union FDA are doing, that thing we can introduce in our regulatory system also. For example, point of care devices, POCT devices. Mahajanji is working on IVD and POCT is a separate regulation already in 2016, United States Regulatory Authority issued separate guidance documents for the blood glucose monitoring system intended for professional point of care devices and self-monitoring blood glucose system designed for the over-the-counter patient use. Very minutely seen, this two-track regulatory approach acknowledges that even when similar POCT technology are employed, clinical setting, operator training, and risk profile directly, substantially between healthcare professionals and lay users are different. Same thing is in European Union also, that IVDR, the similar difference framework exists with the specific implications of POCT devices. Recently, Dubai government also introducing a standard for POCT devices only. So my request is who the persons are working on IVDs, they are also, through this event, we can give a proposal for a separate POCT regulation so that it will help us minutely, maximum people are working on POCT devices. So it is so we have to think, that is the harmonization. And now the fragmentation, in case of fragmentation, obviously we know there are different multi-layers, approvals, purposes, there are overlapping of jurisdiction between center and state authorities, and varying importance can create inefficiency. For example, the notified body. If we see the notified body, the use of notified body globally for the critical medical devices, for class C and class D, which are India is class C and class D. But in India, notified bodies are for the class A and class B. And the direct critical devices are directly looked after by the CDSCO drug inspectors, the CDSCO regulators. And for the state drug control authority, where low risk product, class A and B, there the regulatory bodies are introducing their TUV suit, BIS are giving their ideas, but that concept should be for the critical devices also. That is the harmonization. We have to think about this. If something we want to be aligned, to be harmonized, so these things are important. So ultimate manufacturers will be benefited. And above all, last panel, there are lots of questions were there. The different ministries are involved in MedTech sector. Absolutely, it is very much important because the device is not only the regulators, most of the pharma people, the items are the medical equipments, biomaterials. So the recent notification for the recruitment rule of drug code DCGI is very much have long-term effect. It will give a step-by-step idea that the regulatory system will be broad, human resource will be from the different background, so automatically this sector will be developed. In such a way, we have to think, and I hope the manufacturers are industrialists are somehow satisfied, but regulators will try to satisfy manufacturers, and so, obviously it will be continued. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhijit, for your opening remarks. So let me start with some questions. Vibhav, you spoke about external harmonization. Ashish spoke about internal harmonization. So let me ask you about external harmonization. If India is going to be a medical device hub like we are for pharma, we all understand that it is critical that our regulatory agency has a name and has a credibility in the international market. So in order that CDSU becomes a truly risk intelligent regulatory agency, what suggestions do you make for transforming CDSU into what you expect it to be?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Sure. Mr. Jauhri, I think I'll just, before I answer your question, just one more point which I take from Mr. Abhijit's remark. You know, today, anybody can guess here how many ministries in government of India are involving in either promoting, regulating, or involved in medical devices. Any guesses? How many ministries in government of India? Yes, ma'am. 13, 1-3, okay? Anybody else? 15, very close. there are actually 17 ministries which are somewhere intriguing either as a procurer of medical device or a policy maker or a regulator or a promoter. So now you think about, when we talk about ease of doing business, one sector being intervened, regulated, promoted by 17 ministries, that's where the challenge starts, right? And I'm not even considering a smaller department here. I'm talking about all large ministries. I think that's where we need to really look into how do we bring that, more governance and less government basically structure, right? But I think there are efforts happening. DOP has taken large responsibility. Ministry of Health through CDSCO is taking large responsibility, and things are improving. But I think still industry is really struggling with that. So we'll look into as we go along. But coming to the question, Mr. Jauhri, I think I'm very happy to respond to you, sir. That recently I attended a meeting in CDSCO chaired by Dr. Raghuvanshi on the talent for CDSCO. They're hiring more people, got a budget, I think, in the budget some money is got. I think that is the kind of work we are talking about as to what does it need to have medical device officers of future, right? I think that's a very good step in my mind. Talent comes number one. If we have the right kind of talent, because unfortunately, since we have got CDSCO, we have been so drug predominant organization that medical device has somewhere come under that, thought process of drugs. So this new set of talent will bring new, fresh understanding. But one more thing that I want to bring to your consideration, sir, is, we started saying that engineers can do justice to medical device. I don't really think so, right? Because engineers are not taught safety, right? They are not taught efficiency. They are taught performance, right? I think exactly, right? So I think it is important that engineers and medicine, on that interface we need people. How do you train them? You train doctors on engineering or you train engineers on medicine? That is left to government. But I think that's very, very critical in my mind. I think number two, sir, now next to talent, number two thing that comes to my mind is also a dedicated regulation to medical device, right? I mean, okay, we got a new chapter, now there is a new act in parliament which will approve, but if that happens, I think that will do some level of justice with the sector. I mean, gone are the days where we used to say we are a nascent sector. We are now $15 billion industry in put together, and we will be soon 30 billion in next 4 or 5 years. So we are no more nascent. Therefore, we need a regulation which is more suitable which does justice to the sector completely. And my last point, sir, would be is that it is very critical for us to keep focusing on clinical evidence. That's very, very critical. Anything which is not validated through clinical evidence will not do justice, with the need of the human being in terms of the medical devices. Those were 3 points from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Vibhav. Ashish, you talked about internal harmonization. I mentor IIT Kanpur Startup Incubation Center. I'm one of the mentors on standards. And one of the issues I see that there's what's struggling for clinical investigation, at what stage they should go, where should they go. So do you have any suggestions for, when you say internal harmonization, simplifying the pathway for clinical investigation of medical devices?
Thank you, sir. That's a very good question. And before I come here to answer this question, first, thanks, Vibhav, for endorsing the fact that working with 17 ministries and close to 120 departments, that becomes a challenge for any organization in ease of doing business. And sir, Abhijit sir, I would like to tell you, we don't see industry versus regulator. We always see regulators are the part of our growth. We always have been insisting that there should be a regulation of medical devices. Now, being from the medical perspective, myself being a medical regulator, clinical evidence is definitely an important thing and of course very close to my heart. extremely important thing is that when we are doing medical research or maybe clinical research in particular, I understand that there are still many gray areas. Rather, there are more than 80% area is in the black for clinical investigation in medical devices. Every single drug goes through 3 phases of clinical trials, but not all medical devices require that. Therefore, this area hasn't developed as much as the clinical science has developed in drugs. But now the problem is on the other side. When a startup or when a company with a new product or a nascent product comes into the field and they are looking towards performance of clinical investigation, their first question is how to start. So definitely for there, we have Taruna ma'am here, and under her leadership, we have the entire MedTech policy, which is running in ICMR. So that is definitely one side where they help us doing the clinical validation and the clinical investigation at the early phase. But more importantly, clinical validation is going to take you to probably the development life cycle of the product. But actually bringing that to the market requires your clinical evaluation, which is based upon a lot of things. Second is clinical investigation, that is equivalent to clinical trial. And third is clinical experience, where the actual users of those devices, they give you the input and then provide you how your product is going to perform in practically the real world. These three things, they need to be put together, and these three things, they need to be seen by the startup right from the day when the product is incepted, which is currently missing in the entire startup ecosystem, which we need to introduce. Now, question is who will introduce, because stakeholders are many. But if there is anything that we can do as an individual or as the industry, we are definitely happy to support the initiative, even towards talent development and even towards making the availability of whatever knowledge gaps are there. We are willing to do that. In fact, MedTech Mitra is a good platform. If that platform is also reaching out, if that platform is also reaching out to the entire startup ecosystem, probably that will also help to some extent to ease the challenges in clinical investigation. Now, the last point before I hand it over to you back is problem with clinical investigation for all startups is they start looking to it when the gap comes just before the marketing authorization starts. And that is where the bigger problem actually appears. Hence, our suggestion will be as the product matures to the level of TR4, TR5, the clinical investigation should immediately start looking, the startup should start looking immediately towards the clinical investigation need and the clinical validation need, so that their challenge of clinical investigation, that will not be an impediment, rather it will become one of the validated activities.
Quick question, Ashish, for you. You spoke about, the some kind of guidance is necessary. You think guidance for clinical investigation beyond what is now written in the documents, for example, whatever chapter is there in MDR, and there is a ISO standard on clinical investigation. Do we need beyond that something more?
Sir, definitely we require to have a very comprehensive document. Means you are aware that I have written a complete 4-volume book,
Yeah,
which
I
is
know.
also still not complete.
That's why I'm pinning you on that.
So the clinical investigation requirements need to be more comprehensively stated. Particularly, there are not the straightforward things. Medical device includes a nanorobot which goes and pierces the RBC to a room-size quantum computer-based PET scanning. So there is a lot of diversity. And to address this diversity, just small documents may not be sufficient. So we need to definitely come up with more comprehensive guideline, probably more more strong decision tree which states in which kind of situation what are the more legitimate and more logical ways of thinking and taking the things further. So probably that will help the entire industry. And probably if we are willing to do that, and if we are willing to go in depth of the vertical of clinical investigation, India would be one of the countries which will break that barrier at the regulatory level.
So one good place to do that would be at BIS, producing guidance from its, as a BIS standard, as a guidance standard. Let me connect you to BIS. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Let me go to Aditya now. Harmonization. What do you think we need to do in order to enhance harmonization of MDR with global regulations? For example, I have long held a view that instead of writing compliance to BIS standards first, ISO IC standards next, manufacturers validated standard, what happens if we reverse the order? Not reverse, interchange. We say compliance to ISO IC standards first, in the absence of which compliance to BIS standards, etc. That straight away tells you that we are going for ISO standards or international standards. My question to you is industry ready, whole hog, all sections of industry ready to adopt international standards? Because BIS, specifying BIS standards gives you a flexibility to deviate from international standards also. So tell me if industry is ready for this interchange, and what else do you think can we do to harmonize with global regulations?
Well, thank you so much, sir. While I answer it, I have an eye on that we have already finished the time, but I'll just take a couple of minutes to answer this. So that's a pretty loaded question in terms of how it should be, but let me answer it in a way that when you do a comparative analysis between a drug and a device, drug pharmacopoeias are pretty standard which looks into ADME. Whereas when you look at devices are prone to changes, and those changes are pretty frequent. Those changes can come within 6 months, can come within a quarter, depending upon the kind of performance it is behaving or it is putting in the market, because that risk is going to come back into your device history files, and that is going to tweak your model of your devices to get you another model of device. And that is where when we say that standards in medical devices are voluntary. You look around all the mature markets. The standards are voluntary in nature. You take US, you take Canada, you take Australia, you take CE marking, Europe, everywhere it is voluntary. Until unless you're talking about a consensus standard in national emergency, we are talking about consensus where the government and the industry stakeholders have come together and formulated something in the national interest. But overall, the standardization is remained at a voluntary level where the manufacturers have given the opportunity to demonstrate the safety and performance. That is the two critical parameters which they have to demonstrate when they're putting their product to the market. There is a comprehensive list of essential principle checklist which is already there in medical device rules, which consists of about 21 principles which you have to demonstrate that against each of the fragmented outputs of your medical device, what are the different standards, what are the different specifications, test methods, bench strength testing, what you're taking. So it is dependent upon the manufacturer. Once you strangulate that thing, you say that you have to just go by the standard and you have to demonstrate your product to be safe in the market. That sometimes is not going to work. And that is where everything has to be a consensus between the industry and the government to come to a stage where they say that under the quality management system, and you have to demonstrate that your product is safe to be utilized and your performance is according to the essential principles which are listed in the regulations. And that is something which can be done, and it is very, very critical. Think about an Indian manufacturer who wants to place their product in a European market. When they do a development of a product with a pretty standard format or a template, they will not be able to put their product in the foreign market, Europe or US, because then they have to do dual testing. They have to again demonstrate those safety parameters against those standards. I'll give you a quick example of OIML, and this is to just demonstrate how harmonization works. OIML is International Organization of Legal Metrology, which looks into products which are giving you measurable outputs, like thermometers, sphygmanometer. Those are tested. Now, this organization was formulated in 1955, and recently in September 2023, India has been given the rights to give certifications for this. What does that mean? That any manufacturer who's doing a production in India and certifying to the standards of OIML, which India is giving you the certification, you are free to place your product anywhere in the market. So that is the strength of a harmonized standardization across the world.
Yeah, legal metrology, I know. We helped them get ISO 17065 accreditation, which facilitates this acceptance abroad. Abhijit, regulator last. Any thoughts on what has been stated by the industry people? Anything that you feel?
Very simply, it's a clinical investigation, not clinical trial. And Rule 7 of Medical Device Rule 2017 clear all these things step by step. If the standard is in BIS, then obviously you follow this. If it is not in BIS, then Indian Pharmacopoeia, ISO, IEC. If it is not even in any international standard, then whatever your own validated standard, that will be used. So it's a very simple way, and at present we have to move in such a way that further we will get more standard, and more standard will be included in our NABCB will include it. And secondly, 17 departments are working on a same sector. So who is the main think tank who can control everybody, who has a power, and you know very well who is Niti Aayog. So Niti Aayog can always, not only now, since 2017, they are giving notification systematically on medical device sector for segregation of manpower, for hierarchy of department and standard and everything. So if this 17 sectors department can easily taking some guidance from Niti Aayog, and obviously we will get the more benefit in our sector. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all the panelists for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to cut short this session. All the hosts are looking at me. We knew that we have short time and Vibhav has to leave. So thanks a lot again, and thank you audience for putting up with us. Thank you.